today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about
men, women, and sex, bridging the intimacy gap. Men and women have completely different approaches to sex because men tend to be more focused on the physical and women tend to be more focused on the emotional. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship, and today we're talking about sex, men, women, and bridging the intimacy gap. We've been doing a lot on this topic, and we're going to keep hitting it for a while because I feel like, let's be honest, men are a little thick. So women, you may listen to this episode and go, duh. Men, you may listen to this episode and go, really? Here's where we are. Men and women have completely different approaches to sex and actually, believe it or not, guys, different needs. And the reason is that the way we experience sex, not only do we have different bodies and different organs, and our bodies are designed for different purposes, right? But our brains are different. Women have far more connections between the creative side and the logical side of their brains. And they move back and forth between the two. And as a result, they operate not only verbally, but sexually very different than men who tend to have less connections between the two lobes. They hang out on one side or the other. We tend to be very linear. The implications here are that not only do we experience sex differently, but we approach it differently. We think about it differently. We have very different experiences of it. And this impacts our communication. And by the way, the next episode is going to be all about communication and how it impacts opening the door for intimacy, really, or sex if you're a guy. Right? Why would I make that distinction? Because men tend to be more focused on the physical and women tend to be more focused on the emotional. And there are a lot of reasons for that. The physical is our body. Our body has basic instincts. We express our needs through our body very often, through verbal expression, through our actions. And the emotional is lodged in our body. And how do I take this apart? How do I break this down? The emotional is the environment in which these things occur. Now, women tend to, because of the wiring of their brains, they tend to be much more aware of the emotional. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that studies show that, for example, women read micro expressions and body language better than men. They're far more aware of it. In fact, women have better peripheral vision than men, and they're far more aware of the emotions in a room than men are. Now, not that men don't have this going on, not that we can't develop this side of ourselves. By the way, guys, we all have a female and a masculine and feminine sides in us. Women have masculine and feminine sides in them. Men have masculine and feminine sides in them. And there are definitely men who can lean into the feminine more. And there are definitely women who can lean into the masculine more. So don't mistake this for misogyny. This is biology 101 that I'm giving you here. The fact is that the feminine is defined by bodies that are dominated by estrogen, and the masculine is defined by bodies that are dominated by testosterone. And also, there are men with higher levels of estrogen, and there are women with higher levels of testosterone than other women. All right, this is all contextual. So I'm speaking in broad generalizations, and I'm speaking to men and women who are having sex together. Men and men, there may be some application of this for you. Women and women, there may be some application of this for you, but I'm not an expert in those areas. And so take what you need and leave the rest. If you're bisexual. You may be have something to share with me about this. If you have something to share with me about this, I'd love it. By the way, I would love to hear from you. Please educate me on my weaknesses, but I'm going to educate you on what I know. And what I know is that women are wired to be more aware emotionally, and men are wired to be more aware of physical threat. It's kind of the way our bodies have evolved over time. Men take physical abuse, let's call it, better. If I were to hit a guy with a 2x4, and if I were to hit a gal with a 2x4 with the same strength, generally speaking, the guy's body's going to take it, the stress of that impact better than the gal. Right? Women's bodies, let's be honest, they're designed to carry, amongst other things, carry children, nurture them, and bring them into the world. And as a result, their brain, they're emotionally wiring, they're super emotionally sensitive, they're very empathic. And men, over time, have evolved more while that's going on. I'm speaking strictly biological development. While that's going on, they have fallen more in the role of providers, of protectors. And so the bodies operate completely. The reason why men and women have separate categories in the Olympics is their bodies are designed differently and react differently and work differently and have different functions. Again, does that mean a woman can't be a provider and a protector? No. Does that mean that men can't be nurturing and caring? No. It just means that over time, each body as a category has developed in a certain way. And what this means is that they have each, depending on the body and the chemistry of that body that you inhabit, there's a different relationship to sex. Because men are very linear, they tend to focus more on the physical. Not that they can't be aware of the emotional, not that they can't be emotional beings, but they tend to, when they get on one track, is the best way to put it. When a man gets on a track, he becomes like a train going down the track. Women have multiple tracks running at the same time. That's probably the best way to put it. Women are actually better at multitasking than men. Far better than multitasking them. And I think multitasking is really invented by women. Men try to multitask. We don't do very well with it. Not that we can't develop it, but it's just not one of our, biologically, not one of our strengths, right? I'm talking about innate strengths. Again, you can develop any strength that you don't have. And at the same time, if you don't have a womb, you're going to have a really hard time carrying a child. And at the same time, if you don't create seeds, you're going to have a really hard time impregnating someone, right? Just get that there are differences. And right, in our society, we're equal, but we have very different strengths. And it's a beautiful and wonderful thing, but it's a big challenge to what? What are we talking about here? Sex. So let's talk about the emotional and the intimacy, emotional and the physical. There's the physical, the raw physical, biological drive to reproduce, right? And let's be honest, women, you can certainly just go for the sex. And men, you kind of like it when they do, but you kind of don't. I was watching an episode of Evil the other day, and there's a character in Evil. It's a CBS show. It's horror. Forgive me for watching horror if you're not into that. And there's a woman who in the show, she becomes more and more masculine as the show evolves. Like her husband is away a lot. She falls into the role of protecting her children, actually kills someone to protect her children. There's a whole moral dilemma around that. Is it bad to kill if you're protecting, et cetera, et cetera? Her husband comes back after being away for a long time and has sex with her, and she's super dominant. In fact, they choose to wear. She says, "Hey, I bought some masks," and we're going to gag ourselves. So she gags him and she gags herself, and she puts a rat mask on him and a tiger mask on himself. And at first, he really enjoys it. And he's like, whoa, they have like amazing sex. He's like, this is incredible. He loves it. He comes home. He says, I want sex. She says, I'm in, right? It's all physical. And she takes over. But afterwards, she walks away. And he sort of goes, whoa, right? He goes, whoa. Now they've been married for a while, so he's trained. He goes, whoa, what happened there? Right? And later on in a future episode, he actually, or maybe it's the same episode, I might be confused. He asks to go to couples counseling with her. And he says to her therapist, who he's doing a sample session with, the therapist says there might be a conflict of interest. I can only go so far with the two of you because I'm working primarily with Kristen. He says Kristen's changed. She's become very dominant in a way that's scary to me, right? So at first he really likes that she's in there. Yeah, let's have sex. And she cuts out the emotional completely and gets into this kind of strange role play thing. But afterwards he's kind of like, oh, there's something wrong with this. It's not working for me, right? So what that says is that, and I think this is actually, guys, we can go here, right? The whole idea of sex for sex sake, that's a very male-driven thing. But the truth is that women really embrace the emotional. The emotional is very important to them. And when we set aside the raw instinct, the raw drive for sex, usually in a marriage, once children arrive, all right, the raw drive for sex lessens for women, but it stays pretty high for men, right? Because the raw drive is driven by what? Instinct. And the instinct is what? To reproduce. And once a woman reproduces, she's got less urgency about this physically, all right? The man still has urgency. God knows why, literally. For a woman, there's an emotional component that's really important. And in this example that I told you, Kristen's husband really misses the emotional component, even though he's kind of turned on and excited by her being dominant and da-da-da-da-da, and he just thinks it's amazing at first. He really gets off on the raw side of it. He misses the emotional component, right? And so men also need this emotional component. It's not like we're just going to enjoy the raw physical part all the time. It's sort of a great story. So let's talk about the emotional component. The emotional component is sex is not just for reproducing. If it was, we'd just have babies and be done with it. Sex is a way for man and woman to connect emotionally, to become closer together emotionally. Right? The reason why we don't just procreate, have children, the reason why we make love, we call it making love, is it's more than sex. It's really about making love. It's about building love. It's about building closeness and intimacy. And what Kristen's husband responds to in this episode is there's no closeness to their sex. All right? He wants that closeness. And the reason is the way men work is they have a physical need that drives them, and they focus on that physical need. But through the expression of the physical need, they experience intimacy and closeness. They experience safety and trust afterwards. Kristen's husband in that episode of Evil did not experience that. He had the raw sex and he was like, whoa, where's my wife? What happened to her? And he says, we need to go to counseling because he realizes something's really wrong here. Women, on the other hand, when they haven't fallen into a very masculine role as Kristen has, and there's a lot more going on with Kristen than that, women, on the other hand, in order to have sex, once the procreation part is lessened, they need to feel the emotional part first and have the sex be an expression of that. What does that mean? It means that the sense of safety and trust needs to be in place first. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that women can't have moments where they say, babe, I need some, right? We all have those moments. What I'm saying is that as a general rule, men, I hope you're listening to me, Your wife wants you to be present for her emotionally, not just getting some. All right. What women generally experience is what I can't remember his name. Kristen's husband in Evil experiences. What women generally experience is babe, let's do it. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. All right, I'm gonna go take a shower now. And that's not satisfying for them. Remember that women are super aware of emotion. They're wired. The reason why they're super aware of emotion is they're wired to make sure that the environment is safe, secure for them and for their offspring. Right? That's what there's physical, biological, emotional wiring for this. They want, and men are wired to help create that environment with them. Co-create, the men and women co-create that environment together, an environment of safety and trust. Men, when you approach a woman with, hey baby, let's do it, you are not co-creating an environment of safety and trust. You're expressing a physical need. And so all the popular advice on this is that when you just express your physical need, anytime you touch your wife, she says, oh, here it comes again. He wants to use my body for his gratification. Unconsciously, that's what happens. All right. The emotional connection becomes less and less, and they want to do it less. Right. And there's a disparate need in sexuality, in sexual experience, but it becomes greater and greater and greater. What happens is, even if the woman has a physical need to experience sex, to experience intimacy, a physical drive, they're going to deny themselves because they don't want to have that experience of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. So guys, you need to get that, particularly guys who are married and have children, you need to get that you need to be building romance all the time, right? Your communications with your wife, what they're doing 90% of the time is saying, I am a utilitarian. I go to work to make money. I come home to eat. I have time with my wife to have sex. Right? That's what it starts to look like to her. Now, you're not really like that. What you are is you're on tracks. You get on a track, you stick with the track. So men, what you need to do if you want to have regular sex is start making love. And in order to make love, what you need to do is you need to develop a track for this, right? You're on tracks. I'm not telling you you need to become, well, you do need to become more feminine in your thinking and more feminine in your understanding. But as you plan and lay down that track, you need to do it from a feminine perspective, right? The track, being on tracks is a masculine thing. We can't get off tracks. It's what we're freaking made for. But we can lay down relationship tracks. I'm working with a woman right now who's dating someone, and she's pissed that all he can think about is work, 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 work. And I said to her, until he lays down relationship tracks, right, that's how it's going to be. And so we're working on can she help him lay down those relationship tracks, or if he just can't, what is she going to do? Men, you need to learn how to lay down relationship tracks. That's all about communication. And that's what the next episode is going to be about. In the next episode, we're going to talk about communication that doesn't work, communication that does work, and communication that really helps us to grow and develop. I want to throw one more. There should be a mic drop there, but there isn't. First of all, I want to hear from you. If you're liking what you're hearing, I want to hear what you like, and we're going to give you more of it. If you're not liking what you're hearing, I want to hear from you, and let's work on that. If you are liking what you're hearing, I want you to subscribe. If you're not liking, I want you to share what you like more of and subscribe. If you're liking, I want you to share this with people. I want you to put it out there. Right? Let's grow this podcast because it can really help people. That's what I'm in this for. I'm in here I want the fruit of my labor to be a tree of life to you and yours. That is what my purpose is here. And also, part of what I want to do with guys in particular and gals is, right, first of all, ladies, I want you to understand why your man is this way. It's not that he doesn't love you. It's not that he doesn't care about you. It's that he's unconscious. And guys, I want you to get that you're unconscious. All right. I want you to grow your consciousness and awareness. And the reason why I want you to grow your consciousness and awareness. I'm sorry, when I get excited, sometimes I slur my words together. The reason why men have been getting away with this is men have been dominant for thousands of years. And we finally figured out that men being dominant isn't good. And women are finally fighting to be equal, and men are slowly but surely letting go and allowing women to step into their strength. And what that means is because men have been dominant for thousands of years, they haven't had to think about women's needs. They basically said, I'm in charge. You do what I say. I set up the institutions, I set up the culture, I set up the society, and you follow along. And women have been put in the role for thousands of years of finding expression in less overt ways. But thank God that's changing, because the result is that we have a planet that's ecologically out of balance. The result is that we have men who are incomplete because they don't embrace their feminine side. We have women who are expressing themselves in overtly masculine ways and losing sight of their feminine side, right? The whole imbalance is coming into balance, right? We're coming into a world where women can embrace their masculinity in balance with their femininity, and men can embrace their femininity in balance with their masculinity. And hopefully our institutions will change and our ecology will change. Our relationship to the planet, to each other, to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet will change. And what I'm really advocating here for, guys, is that you start to explore what it means to allow your emotional side to find more expression in ways that are vulnerable. All right, so we're going to tap that in the next episode, how to communicate, experience emotion more deeply, and to be more vulnerable. In the meantime, this is Rich Heller signing out, and thank you for listening to this episode of Rich in Relationship.